Well, good morning.
Yes!
It's like church. Good morning, welcome to
yeah. Welcome to This Is Our House
podcast
again. Yep. And then we're with a friend of ours.
Hello.
Hey, Joey.
Hi, Joey.
How's it going, guys?
Woo!
Up,
Guest
dude?
number 2.
That's
Let's
right.
go.
Back-to-back guests. We had Ben Kearns last time. We got Joey, who's another youth pastor in the area.
So excited to be here. Thank you
man.
for having me.
Joey, will you, well, for a little background on Joey. Joey started youth ministry in Marin County almost the same time that Shelly and I did.
Yeah, like 2 months apart.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, we got like a
sync.
summer month or summer months in, and then Joey arrived, which was awesome. Joey's become a great friend of ours and good ministry companion, colleague, and just a great dude. We want to bring him in and get some perspective on his culture and background and upbringing and what he has to say about students. He's got a giant heart for students. So Joey, introduce yourself a little bit. Talk about where you're from, 3 things about you, that sort of thing.
Great. Hi. Yes, I am Joey. I am the youth pastor of sorts at Hillside Church of Marin. I've been there for it'll be 6 years in August. So very crazy to think about. Yeah. Originally, though, not from here, not from California at all. Grew up, born and raised in Texas.
Texas forever, baby. Texas forever.
Fort Worth area. Grew up there, went to school there. Eventually would move to Florida for a bit of time. Moved back, get married, moved to Arkansas.
Yeah.
And then move here from Arkansas. So I came here from Arkansas.
Dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Bible Belt. Like
Bible
the
Belt.
fullest.
I've been all around it.
Yeah.
I've taken my lap.
Yes. Dude, now you're here.
Yeah.
There's like no Bible Belt anything. This is like, it's like, I don't even know, like anti-Bible Belt.
Saggy pants belt.
Saggy pants of
The land of...
the Bay Area. The Bay Area is the saggy pants of
Yes.
Christianity.
That's right, dude.
My full saggy.
Straight up, man. Do whatever you want. Feel whatever you want.
Oh boy.
3 facts.
Yeah, Joey, share us 3 random facts that students need to know about you.
Okay, 3 facts. First one, my wife and I, who will be married for 10 years in August,
Woo!
started dating our junior year in high school.
Oh my
Yes.
So we were
That is
high
wild.
school sweethearts. Been married for, like I said, almost 10 years. We were dating for like, God, what, I guess like 5 years before we got married. So we've been together for I think I've been with my wife for almost half of my life at this point, and I'm
Whoa.
31.
That's cool.
That's amazing. That's
So,
so
like, junior, so you're
I think
16?
we started dating when I was 16. I'm
Wow.
31,
Yeah.
so it's just about half of my life I've been
Dude, that's epic,
with
man.
Sarah. We have 2 kids, James, who's about to turn 7, and Emma, who is 3. So that's cool. A fun fact, I can do the belly roll.
Oh.
The one.
You might make his tummy.
My tummy can dance.
We won't ask
Wow.
you to do it for the camera.
That's
but
amazing.
Please don't. Please don't. Third fact, I had kidney stones in
Wow.
8th grade.
Whoa, in 8th
In
grade.
8th grade, I had kidney stones.
Dang, dude. I heard that's
I'm sorry.
like.
So
Would you?
Painful.
Yeah. Did you pass him?
I had to have surgery.
You have surgery.
I had to have
really?
surgery to get
Whoa.
them out. Yeah.
As an 8th grader.
Yeah. As an 8th grader.
See, that's like
That's a good
legit.
story.
Talk about trauma. That's legit
Yeah.
trauma. You know what I mean?
It really was. Yeah.
We had an
As
episode
opposed to-
podcast like where it was like
Oh,
don't
yeah.
abuse like the word trauma in your life. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's so trauma. It's like, no, dude, just do your homework. You had surgery.
He
Yeah.
had kidney stones,
You had kidney
guys.
stones
so-
in 8th grade,
Yeah.
man. It's a big deal.
Another fact, I failed 9th grade.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you do something repeated?
I repeated 9th grade.
Oh my
but
gosh.
Did so well in my 2nd year of 9th grade that I was never a sophomore in high school.
Oh,
So I was 9th
whoa.
grade twice, then I skipped to be a junior.
No way.
That's cool.
So I still graduated on time, but I was never a sophomore in high school.
Dude.
So
That's
I was
cool.
like too dumb to be a sophomore the 2nd year, but too smart to be a sophomore the 3rd year.
I never
So-
knew that about you,
Yeah.
man. That's
That's
amazing.
funny.
Yeah.
How did so round 1 when that happened, were you just like, obviously that kicked you into gear and you just
Yeah, so
What was that?
I failed 3 classes my freshman year of high school. I just didn't care. And then I missed in algebra 1. You know, you learn slope, like rise over run.
Oh, yeah.
I was absent from school that day, and I never learned it. And I
Really
learned
threw you
quickly
off.
that was a very integral part to
Slope is
algebra.
a big deal.
Don't miss slope day.
I failed Spanish and I failed science, and I've never been good with languages.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's hard.
But somehow I passed to Greek in college.
There you
So,
go. Yeah, you got through it.
Nice.
Yeah, I got
Seminary,
through it,
baby.
yeah.
Dude, that's wild, man. So then you
That's
just,
kinda cool.
so then when you repeated, like they're just like, oh, back to sophomore
How does
classes,
that
don't
work?
need them.
Yeah,
Well,
through
it was
different
like,
classes.
you know, our high school was like a credit system.
Okay.
And so you had to have a certain amount of credits to be considered like, just, you know, sophomore, junior, senior.
Okay.
And so I made up for enough credits to be considered a junior the next year.
Yeah.
So that's just how it works.
Excellent.
But yeah.
Interesting.
So those who are struggling with school right now, just know there's still hope for you out there, okay?
But don't miss slope day.
Yeah.
Don't miss slope day.
Don't miss slope day.
Things will go downhill.
For sure.
Fast.
Yep, there you go.
Dude,
That's me.
That's amazing, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so besides skipping 10th grade, that's pretty epic. You've been a youth pastor for a while now. Talk about what got you into like wanting to hang with students and like your heartbeat for kids and. talk about
Yeah.
that.
So I've been a youth pastor, either like volunteer, part-time or full-time, for my first kind of job was I was 19. And so I've been a youth pastor for 12 years in some sort of degree. And, you know, I think first off, I was drawn towards youth probably because I was just an immature kid and I related more to youth than I did adults at the time. But slowly but surely, God just kind of gave me that calling. God was like, this is where I need you to spend your time and your effort and your energy and to pour into really what is the next generation of Christians, of believers, of followers of Jesus. And so ironically, I got my calling my senior year in high school. I thought I was going to go to school for audio technician. Like I wanted to like work in a studio and record albums.
Yeah.
And it was probably April of our senior year in high school. So I'm like a month and a half away from graduating where God's like, nope, you're going to go to seminary. And so I had to and then I have to start applying for this type of college, you know, a month and a half before I graduate. Could you imagine not applying for colleges until you were about to graduate from high school, right? So that was like my summer. And so, and just slowly but surely, like over the past 12 years, like there's been times when it's been really hard and I'm like, I'm done with youth ministry. These kids stink and I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And then it's like, in those moments, in those seasons, like God just reminds me that it is these generations that just continue to need to hear of the hope and the love and the grace that Jesus gives us. Because man, they need it. For sure. So,
dude, for sure, man. Well, we all do, and this is like the formative years, man. It's super awesome. Yeah, dude, that's good. I love that you got your calling so young. That's super cool. We talked about calling a little bit with our church and with youth group. We're always hoping that kids, like, regardless of what they do with their lives, but like that they would, you know, give it to Jesus, and whether that's being a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor or whatever. But it's always cool when someone's like, I think I want to do this kind of work. And we just had one of our students, like, well, at least we went to Nicaragua, and one of our students, Emma, she was like, I want to like do mission stuff now. Like it was like, oh, this is so, and just
Change your major.
encouraging. Yeah, she changed her major. She's going to Point Loma, and she changed her major.
oh wow.
Mission studies.
To like,
cool.
to yeah. So that was pretty encouraging. So it's just cool, like when you hear stories of like that, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, Joe, you've done. So you said you grew up in the Bible Belt, and and now we're in the opposite of that. Talk about some differences. Talk about like what is youth culture like, issues you saw there, how did kids receive the gospel there, what was the long-term discipleship there versus here, how have you experienced some of those things?
Yeah, and so culture obviously I think is just it's very different. When I first moved here, I met with the youth pastor who is no longer in Marin County, and he told me, you're coming into youth ministry from a completely different area, and you think the starting line is here, but in reality, the starting line is about, 20 yards back.
Yeah.
Because in the South, in Texas and Arkansas or Florida, church, and it's probably a little different now, because I think the U.S. as a whole is becoming more post-Christian and not just sections of it.
Totally.
I think even pastors in Texas are they're not there yet. They're getting close to dealing with the same kind of culture and scenarios and society that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
But there was, at least at the time, where Christianity and really like youth group culture was like almost built into the DNA of the culture of the city, to where, what are you doing on Wednesday night? Well, no matter whether you were like the worst kid in the class or the best kid in class, you were more than likely a part of some youth group. And so that was very different from here, where built into their schedules was church. Yeah. Where here it's we're fighting to make it a part of their schedule, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest change for me, is church is not in the DNA as it was, but for better or worse, I think. I think there's pros and cons of it. I think pro, meaning that the kids that are showing up to our youth groups on Mondays or Wednesdays for you guys, or on Sundays, it means they actually want to be there. Yeah. For the most part, there's still like the outliers, for sure, right? But they're there because they want to. Yeah. Whereas, for me growing up and seeing many students go through youth group, it was just like the cool place to hang out. When I don't think it's ever been referred to as a youth group in Marin County.
Yeah, for
sure. Where's the cool place to hang out? Oh yeah, the church.
Yeah.
No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think you really get a more honest and raw student who is like, hey, my life is really busy, but I am choosing to make time for this, and I'm choosing to be here and to hear what you have to offer and what God has to offer. And so they're more open to it. Where kids in Texas that I know of, youth pastors that are there now, that are like, they think they're saved, or they think that they're in because they just go and this is a part of their DNA, when in reality they know much less about their faith journey than students here. And so, con though, it's really hard to get students to come. And sometimes you feel like you're doing, you're making wrong decisions at every turn because kids just don't want to show up. So.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of competing. We've talked about that quite a few of our episodes, for sure. Yeah.
It's up to every kid to specifically prioritize that, and even like because you have the kids that, while they still get to like choose to show up, or they've got like their parents that make them go, or it's just like they've got people. So you've got the people that I think that actually really want to be there, but we've also got kids that feel like they're supposed to go, or that's like what their parents are telling them to do, and then so you've got all across the board still, but ultimately it's like it's still, whether they're making the priority or their parents are making it a priority, like you have to fit it in a way that I feel like might be different. So
totally.
Yeah.
I think a lot too about how there's such, I remember hearing this years and years ago, I was like, oh, that's it, like the idea of belonging before believing. There's a kind of a ministry model that is kind of circulating, and it's been circulating for a long, long time. It's like the model is belong, believe, become. So it's like the transformational steps of discipleship. But I think in places, even when I was in Colorado, Kansas City, I think the starting point for so many people at first was believe, and I say that like in air quotes because how do we even know? Like, if we're really honest, how do we know how to talk about, like, does a middle schooler really know what they believe?
Yeah.
I'm like, even if they're confident in it, like, they're still figuring out what belief means at all.
Totally, right.
But that's the starting place. But there's been so much youth ministry work across culture, I think, to talk about the importance of belonging first. But here, it's like, undeniably, they have to feel a sense of belonging before anything comes after that. I think we've at least seen that in our ministry for sure. But I think that's definitely a pro. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
That's one of the benefits of being in a place like here, for sure. It's really good.
Definitely.
What challenges do you see difference? Like what are some of the challenges you saw students in South Bible Belt areas facing, or perhaps how did those play out versus how they play out here? Sorts of things like that.
I think it's really hard because I haven't done ministry in the South for a while, but I think a challenge that many students, whether it's the South or it's here, face when it comes specifically to their faith, not like what are the challenges they're facing like on the outside with pressures, because the pressures are all there no matter where you're at, and the stress of it all and the anxiety that's just across the board. I think the challenge that when it comes specifically to faith that I am as a youth pastor wrestling with when it comes to my students is seeing their faith transform from a dependent faith to an independent faith. Especially in the South, they go to church just because it's like it's dependent on something else, whether it's because of the culture, whether it's because of family tradition or whatever else. Like they come to church because of X or Y, and then when they get to college and they're away from all of those things that made them dependent on their faith, when that's completely stripped away, they enter into this, they have new ideologies that are coming up and new beliefs and new opinions and new different sides of views that they're just taking in, that they just don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with it because in middle school and in high school, they more than likely were not taught how to make their faith transform from like their mom bringing them to church or their parents bringing them to church to them actually taking the time to grow their faith themselves. And I think it's very similar here as well. And so one of my that's really what clicked with me probably 2 years this should go was how do I take my middle school student that I just inherited, like a 6th grader who is only here because his parents give him a ride, he's not walking here or whatever. How do I get this kid to understand that the only way his faith is going to grow in the next 10 years is if he does the work through the Holy Spirit, right? Obviously the Holy Spirit plays an integral part in it. But I want to be able to prepare that kid that when he gets to college and is met with so many different things that are going to try its best to pull him away from the church, to be like, no, I've done the groundwork and I can still have my faith intact in the midst of all of that. And so that's just like, to me, I think that's the biggest challenge for our students as, you're about to have seniors graduating and they're going to go off to college. And it's a horrible stigma. We had this expectation. Well, they're probably not going to go to church for the next 4 years when they're, it's we had this horrible assumption that they're going to fail at being followers of Jesus for the next, at least for the next 4 years. And then maybe once they get their job and they get their life on track and they get a family or whatever, then they'll finally feel the need to get back to church. And it's like, no, I don't want that. I want our students to be able to go into college and know how to be a part of the church without someone holding their hand. Because I think that's part of what's sometimes our programs enable the hand holding, right, to the point where when they get to college, it's like they're not going to hold their hands in school. They're definitely not going to hold their hands into a church service. So like, how can they learn to go into a church and know what to do without anyone being by their side?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge challenge that no one's talking about.
Yeah.
Obviously we can talk about how they're going to deal with doubt, and they're going to deal with stress and deal with the busyness and the need for success and the need for attention that college is going to bring. And I'm not like trying to like play those up. I mean, those are like huge topics. We just spent 5 weeks talking about doubt in our youth ministry. But I think we need to stop having this like horrible assumption that, well, go be, yourself for the next 4 years and totally forget about the church until you finally feel like there's a need for it afterwards,
Yeah.
So, I don't know, how have you helped with that?
Yeah, Ben.
How have I?
What have you done?
What have I done?
Gosh, just kidding.
Well, I think we share that we've done some talking on this show as well about just the need to cultivate a love for the church. That is undeniably something that withstands the test of time and allows for a through line to be held for a student's faith, from anyone's faith. I mean, everyone needs to have a love for the church. You got to. I think for us, you talk about like that stereotype, that assumption of like, well, most likely when college hits, like they're done. They're gonna take a pause on faith for a little bit. And I think for at least our culture, and so much of our culture is shaped by who Ben Kearns was. He was on the podcast last episode. He talked about this a little bit too, because that's such a heartbreaking reality, right? It's just like that's the statistic. I think that we do our best to mitigate that as much as possible. And one of the ways that we actually, I think, mitigate that is also almost accepting the fact that, like, I guess for some students that's their journey. So how do we give them a love for the church so that they do have this arc in their story that goes, oh man, like, okay, I did my own thing, but now that I have grown up a bit and I've gotten out of my system or whatever that looks like, they do enter back in, and it's not like there's no barriers to entry. And I think the difference that I, growing up in Colorado versus here, that I've seen from the handful of students that we've gotten to graduate out and watching their kind of journeys too, there really does seem to be this, it's like there is a love for the church. It's like they know that they're loved here. They know that like we're there for them, we care for them, and that God loves them at the end of the day. And I think there's just we have so many families, so many people here who they will say to us, gosh, we want our kids to have this thing that you're offering. And I took this journey myself, but now I'm here. And I think there's just so much of the human experience that God's faithful in that. And so we want the same thing. At the end of the day, we want people to love Jesus and love the church. And I think how we've sought at least to mitigate that in the long run. I mean, just recently, because of course we want students to be involved, and I think that we just have to claim this reality of like, you have to choose this. Like really kind of seeking to empower students in their faith. As simple as that. Your journey is now your own, and you have to make those choices to show up. And so we talked to, even just recently, we did a senior dinner, talked to students about the importance of, it's like, gosh, like we're in covenant. We hope that we've given you a good flavor of the church. Like we've done our best.
Okay. Yeah.
And if we may have failed. We hope we haven't. We've done our best, but we want you to like have a greater palate for the spiritual diet of Christianity, and where you go, you are valuable, you are needed, and this is so much bigger than us. And if you can follow up with that, that's kind of one of the things that we talk about. But
I think you're totally. You go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say, I think what's hard too, because I agree with that, but I mean in my own experience I'm leaving in the fall, and I've only known this church, right? And I think what our students do know is that they're loved here and that God loves them. But I think it's the outside of these walls, how that applies is so different, and they almost have this loyalty to our church that they like don't want to experience anything else, and because it's not the same and it's not this way. And I mean, not to like call anyone out, but like people that I know from my own class and like how we've seeing everyone after we've graduated and where we're all at. And I know that's like a worry for myself is like, I mean, I don't know, like in a natural like worry and doubt of like, gosh, I don't know what it's gonna be like. I've never experienced anything and it's gonna be hard and different, but I'm ready for that like challenge. But I think a lot of students have that place of like, I'm gonna do it, but then things get upcoming, they've figured out freshman year and all this stuff, and then it just gets pushed down because the Marin Covenant's not right around the corner, and it's not like my safety space isn't there. It's like I have to meet other people, and it has to be new and whatever, and that's so like overwhelming, and like, you know, it's that whole next step. So I think that's where the trouble is. It's like they do know that they're loved here, and they always want to be able to come back here, but this building isn't everything, you know, and that's that idea that they don't, I think this is challenging. Not that they don't know, but it's just, it's harder in reality than it is to, you know, I think that's what it is. I don't know.
Totally get that. And that's, I think, spot on for both, right? I think one of the stories that reminds me of is the story of the prodigal son, right? I think our jobs as youth pastors not only is to help equip students to know who Jesus is and to make that decision to follow Jesus, but also to like give them, I think our job as a youth pastor is to give them the best picture of what church can be as best as possible, right? I think the story of the prodigal son, you know, if you were to relate that kind of like to a church sense, when the son goes off on his 4-year journey, you know, 4 years, I know it's not really 4 years in the Bible, but like let's just say his 4-year journey, right? And he comes to the end, he's like, like I've just wasted away everything. What does he remember? About how good his father was. And that's what, it's the memory is what drove him back to it. How good, he's like, my dad treats his servants better than when I'm being treated. So even if I come back, even if it's in a different way, you know, it's going to look different, I remember how good the church was. And that hopefully will be a sustaining memory and a picture that hopefully we both have been able to paint. And for me, one thing that I've seen work well, I've only been able to do it a few times, and I'm hoping to do it again this fall with our upcoming seniors, is to like force them to go do church somewhere else.
Oh, that's good.
And so one year in Arkansas, I had a student graduating, and he wanted to go check out his university, but his parents couldn't drive him, and so I drove him to the school, and we did the school tour. I was like, all right, we did a school tour, now we're gonna go do a church tour. And so we looked up like 5 different churches. I'm like, I want you to go up, and I want you to go and ask questions and figure out about what this church is about and stuff like that. And so it kind of forced me to like go into the doors and to, you know, and so in the fall, I don't know, should I be giving away details about what I want to do this fall with our seniors? Do it. One of the things I want to do with our seniors, because we have with our seniors, because we have a really sweet group of seniors, who are my 6th graders. That you know, you're gonna have the same thing, right? Our upcoming seniors are the 6th graders we inherited, which is
the whole bit.
It's crazy. It's a crazy thing to think about. I want to take them on a trip in the fall sometime over a Sunday morning, where we like choose like 3 different churches in whatever city we're gonna be in, and they all go to like different churches on a Sunday.
That's really cool.
And
come back
experience in church by themselves. And you know, what did they see? What did they experience? What were they nervous about? Stuff like that. And so just to help them be like, yeah, you can do this. You can walk through the doors on your own. You don't need a friend there. You don't need a parent or a relative there to help you out. And so
that's so good.
Don't tell anyone.
It's a Joey Martin exclusive MCC hat. I love it.
Oh man, that's
really cool.
That is so good. Yeah, I love that. I find so many times too. There's such a. I've been thinking about when I was in college, and I think so many. I've been hearing many stories like this where students are choosing. I'm so close with God. I'm doing my own expression of faith, and all of us are like, because it's like, oh, that's important. Like it's good. Like yes, at the end of the day, like everyone needs your own. You have to work out your walk with the Lord, but the vessel that Christ has established for that to happen is in community with the body of Christ. Mm-hmm. It's not apart from it. It just isn't. Shelley is such a fan of saying, if your walk is individual, then it's not like, it's just not a real walk with Jesus. You are shortcoming your faith tremendously. Totally. And I've become a fan of that. And I think, you can just go back to the South. I've always talked about Colorado. Of course, it's not the South.
Definitely not.
I was like, where are you going with that?
In the attachment of the Bible Belt kind of analogy, there's still so much Christian influence. We always talk about like Colorado's like the buckle of the Bible Belt. Like it's like there's like this fringe part of it, or maybe not the buckle, but like the tail strap of it. There's just
keychain on the belt loop.
Yeah, there's
there's just so many analogies going on.
Yeah. They're all terrible too. None of our analogies are
belt, saggy pants.
None of them make sense at all. But there's so many people that I just adore, still great friends with in Colorado that have, and for not like terrible reasons either, have been hurt by the church, given up on the church, whatever. It's just like, and it just sucks because that's just it's a Band-Aid. It's never gonna actually allow you to flourish with Jesus. You got to be part of the church, and I think we definitely, perhaps that's a pro of our area, Marin County, is that kids showing up, they kind of get that a little bit. They understand that. They don't have to. So, man, that's really good. I love that idea. That's super cool. Yeah, that's super cool. You have any other thoughts on that, Katie?
I mean, I don't know. I'm really focused on this belt loop now. I don't know, like what in particular are you thinking?
I just was curious.
No, I mean, yeah, it's great. It's
true. You're about to enter into that yourself too, right? You can come back for a reunion episode, and we can go.
I'm gonna go have my 4 years.
How'd you do it? How'd you?
Tell everyone how I failed.
No.
I come back as a
success.
Hippie. I mean, yeah, that's what I was sharing, like, too. Like, I mean, yeah, that's always been, like, I mean, for me, I mean, yeah, I literally grew up in this church. I've never consistently been to other churches. I've been to other churches, just not in that way. And I've been so, like, my family's here, like, literally, and then my friend's family, and then my people that feel like family. And I've been so connected to this church my whole life that I kind of don't feel like, I mean, I know Jesus outside of it, but I haven't experienced that, and so it's hard. It's easier for me to say, like, no, I'll be fine. Like, it's great. But you know, in reality, I know it's going to be harder than it is to say that, and so that's always for sure like a fear. Always is like, I don't know how it's going to go. I'll be out on my own figuring it out, but I'm excited for the challenge. I'm already taking that effort and the initiative to. I've getting plugged in with people. I've been luckily Courtney, one of our pastors on staff, is. From the area I'm going, and she knows her alma mater is the school I'm going to, and I've gotten to use connections through her, and she's been telling people that I'm coming and all this stuff, and I've gotten to talk to some of the on-campus ministries, people that work through it, and I'm like, I'm a worship leader, by the way, if you need me, put me up there, whatever you want, like, kind of putting yourself out there in an aggressive way, but I mean, but honestly, and being, now, I think also going in, knowing, like, all right, I have somewhere to start, even if it doesn't click and I don't love it, like, I have somewhere I can, like, first week, like, dive into, and, because I think that's the first step is going to be, like, pushing myself into, okay, talk to people you don't know and put yourself out there. And then once I'm doing it, I think that'll get into the groove, and eventually, hopefully, I'll find my spot. But, yeah, I don't know. It is scary, though.
I love what you just said about you're aggressively putting yourself out there. And I actually want to say something. We never talked about this here, for sure. For any students who are listening to this, for sure, not just as like a method for college, but even right now.
Yeah.
If you want to be involved in doing something, please tell your leader that you want to
aggressively
do it.
Put yourself out there,
because like there's nothing more joy.
Trademark that.
Like I think we all kind of navigate like this, like it's almost this false sense of humility of like, I don't want to like.
Yeah.
They probably already got the help they need, and they probably don't. But like anytime a student comes to me and says like, Ben, we should play this game at youth group, or
Boom.
Ben, I want to play guitar.
I'm in.
Like. Anytime someone's ever said to me, like, I want to be involved in doing something that involves some sort of leadership, I'm like, yes. And every person on college campuses, I guarantee every ministry leader is just like, is that their whole job is positioning to try to get students to come, and if someone comes to them and says, I want to be involved, like, it's going to be the biggest, they're going to love it.
Yeah, I think too, because I feel like this just, I don't know if this is the age of high school or if it's an area thing or whatever, but I definitely feel like there is some sort of like, I don't know, just a fear of embarrassment or rejection or anything like that when it comes to putting yourself out there, and everyone kind of wants to fly under the radar in some way, and I don't know, I think to me it's just a part of like, all right, we're graduating high school, we're adults now, you kind of have to do that, and you have to put yourself out there and not be afraid to brag on some level, like obviously be humble, but like, you know, and I mean, even in ways of like the first time I'm like, okay, this is just a high school job, but like having to like interview for a job, like you kind of sell yourself, like it's not like, well, I don't want to sound like braggy, but it's like, no, this is the time. If there's a time to brag, it's to sell yourself in that way. So I think it's okay to be like, you know, in some ways, again, don't go crazy, but like being able to be like confident in yourself. And I think it's hard because it's like, this is an age when nobody's confident in themselves, but fake it till you make it, and just put yourself out there in a way, because being told no is just part of life.
Let's talk about that for a second. Like, can we take a turn and talk about confidence?
Sure.
Like, that was such a, like, that's so true. Why? That's like there's such a lack of confidence. I mean, I wrestle with that. Why is there such a lack of confidence? Why? Like, even people who come across as really confident, you get them one-on-one, and I'm not confident at all. I just put on a show. Why do you think that is right now, guys? Like, what do you think, Joey?
I think, and I don't know the psychology of it, because I'm not a psychologist by any means, but whatever it is, we always tend to focus on the negatives. I mean, from like my own personality, like what I know way more about is what I'm not good at than what I am good at. And so, I mean, I mean, think about like news, like our news focuses way more on the bad things in life than the good things in life. Like there's just something about negativity and maybe sin maybe as well that just like is exemplified in us. So we have a fear of we don't want people to see our bad spots, right? I can pull up social media if I had social media, which I don't anymore, and all that we see is the good parts, because there is a fear that if you see the bad part of me, then you might not like me, right? And so confidence, I think, can relate to that, where I know the worst parts about me, and if I feel like if I put myself out there aggressively, then they might see parts of me that they don't like. And what's like the one thing none of us ever want to experience? Rejection.
Exactly.
And so we hide behind screens, we hide behind other people, we hide behind whatever it is we want to mask up in front of, because we know what our worst parts about us, the worst parts about us is, and we don't want people to see that, and therefore when we're not able to be completely open and honest with who we are, we lose confidence.
Man. So good. It's true.
It's true.
We get in our own way so much. I remember watching, and we watch Ted Lasso season 3 right now. It's a good time. But he talks about the beginning. He's like has this motivational moment with his team, and he's talking about, it's just so easy to get in the way. It's so easy for us to get in our own way, and I think with this, like, don't let yourself get in the way of just even simply walking through the doors of a church, or saying, hey, I have this, I want to do this thing. Like, I want to do a small group. Let's get together and do like a football game or a barbecue, or I want to play guitar, or I want to serve, I want to be a greeter, like anything, like, don't put on that.
I think I think why it's so hard is like the reality is that the first whatever it is that you put yourself out there in every way is like it's not fun to put yourself out there. It's not like anyone wants to do that. It's like you are challenging yourself. You have to push yourself. And I think in this state of like first semester, freshman year of college, there's so much going on that you're trying to figure out. And you're very anxious already. And so putting yourself out there is another anxious thing. So everyone's like, well, I'm not going to add that onto my plate. And when the reality is what I think, I'm like, well, that's going to make everything better. Like if you go into this place and you're going to push through that moment of awkwardness, of feeling uncomfortable, whatever it is. But once you get plugged in somewhere, you're going to have people to discuss all of that stress with them and all the things you're already anxious about. So I'm like, come on, just you gotta push yourself the one time, and I think the benefits of that are so much better than but I think all of everything coming together, it's just when you look at it on paper, you're like, I don't have time for this. This is gonna stress me out even more. But I don't know.
No, that's good.
We'll see how I do. Maybe I'll have failed too.
And it's a lot easier for a lot easier for us to talk about this than actually do it.
Yeah. Exactly,
I remember, my first few years of like actual college, I was at home, and so I went to the same church, right? And then when I first moved away, I had a job at a church, so it was like
just given.
It was given, right? And so my first actual experience of being in a city where I was not employed by the church, where I was not in my hometown. I moved to Houston for a year. Mm-hmm. My wife was going there for graduate school. I took just a job at a hotel. So I wasn't working. I was like not working in ministry. I knew no one outside of like my fiance, and that was like probably the 1 year where I felt like the least connected to a church. It's hard. It is like what we're talking about is not easy by any means. Yeah. There was like, I met someone from our work who invited me to his church, and we went a few times. We're just like, we tried a small group there. We're like, we're not really feeling it. And then we go to Second Baptist Church, which if you didn't know, Second Baptist Church in Houston was like on the top 10 list of biggest churches in America. It was literally right down the street from us. And there you can just feel lost because you're just in like a sea of fish where, like you could easily just like no one will ever know your name. And we tried to connect there, and it just wasn't working, And I think you just have to, I think maybe it's a pro and a con too, like that. You go to like a college town, there's going to be probably a wealth of like college ministries that you could like try to find your niche, and figure out which works for you. And I said pro and a con because then you just become a church hopper and you never really, find your like, put your roots in. But pro is if there is not a church that you just are not fitting in for some reason. Like, I probably have kids in my youth ministry that just won't fit in your youth ministry. Totally. And vice versa, because our youth ministries are tailored to the students that we have. And so encouragement for our, if you're watching this and you're about to go off to college, be the aggressive person. Take the first step into a door of a church. But if you're just finding like it's just not the right fit, I think there's probably another church that could potentially be the fit.
Such a big deal.
Don't just give up the first time it doesn't work. That's what happened to us. We were just like, we tried 2 churches out. It's just not working out. We'll just become like, backseat Baptists and just like be, not really plug in, just kind of go for an encouraging word and then leave, And that was like a wasted year, I felt like, of my faith. It's a good year because I just got married and that was awesome. But faith-wise, it was like, I'm really struggling, So
for sure,
put yourself out there, and if it doesn't work, don't give up, because there's always another church that's willing to let you in.
But at our senior dinner, we were talking about this. One of our friends and leaders, Blake, long-term leader here, he used the analogy of like Italian food or Mexican food or some sort of, you go to some sort of restaurant and you get like, you order something and like, gosh, I got food poisoning from here. Like, and it just so happens to be like, I went to this Italian food restaurant and like, I got super sick, like bad meatballs, whatever, but like, you don't like throw out the idea of eating Italian food for the rest of your life. Hopefully, like like you
just at that spot.
You're like, I had a bad experience there. Like, but you still like have a taste for good food and good Italian food, and you don't throw the whole thing out just because you had one bad flavor. That's such an important thing for the long haul. There's no doubt about that. Okay, one more question for you, Joe.
Okay.
How do you see, we talked about a lot of the struggles, I think, the importance of coming to the church, which continues to be a really important theme, I think, for how we navigated this podcast. How have you seen students experience hope here in Marin? What is good news for kids? How do they tangibly experience that reality in their lives?
I think the best news our kids can hear about Jesus, and this is something we wrestled with in our series on doubt, is God, their questions are not too big for God.
Come on.
At least the students that I've experienced in the past 6 years, they have a lot of questions, and I think maybe this is a difference in south of the United States and where we're at in the Bay Area. Is I felt like growing up, you couldn't really ask questions. And there was definitely a period in Christianity where it was like, you just have to believe it, and there's no questions to be asked, and you just gotta step out in faith and
Jesus, Bible, God, that's the answer.
Totally right. And what I'm finding here is the more questions we have, the better than answers. I heard it was a quote from a lyric. He said, "The opposite of faith is not doubt. It's when we have it all figured out."
Come on.
And
that's good.
And so I think the good news is like, hey, God can handle your questions. Don't just because you have questions about faith, because you have questions about how the LGBTQ and community can relate to the church, because you have questions about that doesn't mean it should eliminate your faith. Just because you have questions about if God's real, it shouldn't eliminate your faith. Because you have questions about church history and the stigma of crusades shouldn't eliminate your faith. Because you have questions about how Christian people have used slavery in the past, it shouldn't eliminate your faith. Go to God with these questions. I think you'll be surprising to find out that there are answers to these questions. They might not be the answers that you think you were expecting, or most likely are the questions that you were not expecting, or the answers you were not expecting. But having doubt is not the end of your faith. And I think that's the best news for our students, because if there's one thing our students are experiencing, is doubt. Not just doubt about God, but a doubt about their lives, doubt about what school they're choosing, doubt about the friend groups. There's so much doubt, and so what I've experienced as good news for our students is there is a God out there who wants to embrace their doubt.
Come on,
and love them right where they're at. 'Cause sometimes we're so fearful that if I give you my doubt, that you're gonna think less of me, or that I'm not going to be worth your time, and then we just live in that doubt, and that doubt festers and leads to deconstruction, and it leads to just a death of our faith. You don't see that in the Bible. And what really made that for me was, so we did the series on doubt, and that's why I'm probably really high on this right now.
Good. Yeah.
And I was reading the biggest doubter in the Bible is
Doubting Thomas.
Doubting Thomas. Come on, it's his nickname, right?
Well, I don't think he was the biggest doubter.
You both did seminary. It's unfair.
But he's the one like
not even in college
the
yet.
Professional youth pastors versus KBL.
So, but he's like, he's known for doubt, right? It's in his nickname, other than the twin. But you read the story of Thomas going to the disciples like, oh, I won't believe it until I see the holes in his hands and in his feet, and I feel the piercing in his side. And Jesus, I think we like to think Jesus just showed up right then and there and revealed to him that he is alive. But it says a week later, Jesus showed up. Jesus allowed Thomas to sit in that doubt.
Yeah, it's good.
I think it was actually 8 days.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
And I think for us, like, we just want to, like, oh, I have doubt, I got to deal with it. I got to figure out the quickest solution. I got to, you know, whether it's meds, whether it's whatever, like, I got to, like, I just got to I got to handle it now, right?
Yeah.
And Jesus says, no, like, it's in that doubt that I think is where you'll find me. And I think if you can just tend to it and sit in that doubt just for a little bit, because we don't like unknown, we don't like the mystery, you will find a crucified Jesus who is risen, who loves you, who is ready to forgive you, who's ready to show you a love that is unexplainable. And that's good news. That Jesus did not reveal himself to Thomas, but he let him sit in that doubt for a week, and then he showed up. And that's good news, is that if we have students who are doubting, let's sit with it for a bit. And I think you'll find that there is a crucified Messiah waiting for you on the other end.
That's good, man. That's good, not just for students, that's good for all of us, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, reality, I remember hearing this, I think, from one of my youth pastor in high school. I think he said this. He was like, you know, high school, you're just practicing, like you're getting the tools ready to go to college. In college, you're getting the tools ready to go on to your life. And then the reality is that you're constantly just practicing how to get tools for the next stage of whatever is next. You're always growing up, and it's all just part of the deal. And for sure, I mean, I need to hear that today. You know what I mean? Like there's plenty of things where it's in my own life where I'm like, like doubting God's provision, His faithfulness, like, you know, for many of those who would listen to this, like, knowing my wife and I are having a baby due soon, which is exciting, and trying to figure out our next place to live, and gosh, it's such a first world problem because we're going to be just fine. Like, we're going to be just fine. It's going to work out.
You will be.
But there's like, it's easy to get hung up on those things. And man, and we find a crucified, risen Savior in the waiting. That's so good.
Yep.
The patience, endurance, it's in the discomfort, man. That's such a good word.
Totally.
So good.
You have your thoughts on that, Katie?
I mean, I think that applies too to the college thing. Just the same thing. Focusing on even God's provision in your first semester as a freshman, like seeing how that's gonna go, and I think just being willing to try and then seeing what God's gonna do from that, I think is so cool. So wish me luck.
Totally.
There we go.
Yeah.
And all of our seniors.
Yeah, for sure.
So good.
That's good.
Wow.
I think that's probably a good
Joey,
time to end.
thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was awesome.
Yeah, Joey.
So
Great
grateful.
conversation.
Yeah, excellent.
So sweet. Okay, are you ready for this? This is how we sign off.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you so much for listening to This Is Our House podcast. Once again, I'm Katie Hill.
I'm Ben Zulsdorf.
And our guest,
Joey Martin.
Woo! We love you all so much. And always remember, ready? Hashtag, this is our house. Cue the music. Here we go. Don't miss Slope Day.